Hey, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Shanti Ariker, who's the Chief Legal Officer at JFrog. Shanti, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Shanti, I want to start by asking you, you obviously began your legal career in private practice. I'm just curious, why you made the jump, and how did that opportunity present itself to you?
So I was always really intrigued with what in-house law was like when I was a more junior lawyer. And when I moved out to California, I was immediately put on a case. I was a litigator at the time. I was put on a case to work with a company called E-Trade,
Hmm.
who didn't have any law department at that time. They had a compliance department only. And so I started working with the company on this litigation and got to know the people and was intrigued by what they do and how the business runs. And I was really interested in financial services and what they were doing as one of the first online brokerages. And so when the opportunity came up to go in-house for them, I
Hmm.
jumped on it. And it was really interesting because I was, as I said, I was a litigator, but they had so many other things to do. Within a few weeks of getting to the job, somebody came and just dumped a box of patents on my desk and said, hey, what do we do with these things? And we have this issue with this trademark. And hey, can you help with this joint venture? And so it just started to be a little bit of everything. And, I was only a third year. And like I said, there was no legal department. So
Wow.
I felt quickly like I was really absorbing a lot of information, but not necessarily understanding how to respond to things. So I was quite lucky in that they had acquired a company just before that, about 6 months before, with a very seasoned general counsel. So I
Hmm.
just called him up and said, hey, I need help here. What do I want to learn, I want to understand, how do I negotiate agreements? I've never really done that. So he said, why don't you come over to my office? So I drove down to his office one day and he walked me through a licensing agreement. And then he said, okay, go do it. Go negotiate these.
Wow.
That was,
Amazing.
that was my training.
So was E-Trade, you were the first lawyer in E-Trade then?
I was the very first lawyer at E-Trade, and over time, I actually advocated for them to get a general counsel because, like I said, I was a third year,
Yeah.
just been practicing mostly litigation, and felt very much like there was a lot of risk that we were absorbing. And so I raised my hand one day and went into the CFO's office. I don't think he knew who I was, and I said, hey, we just got 8 lawsuits, class action lawsuits, and we need somebody with gray hair around here that can
Yeah.
understand what we're doing and what we're not doing and influence the board and the management team. And I'm, this very low level lawyer here who's doing what I can, but I really feel that we're exposed. And they brought in a very seasoned general counsel shortly thereafter.
Huh. Interesting. Well, is it fair to say it sounds like trial by fire, but did you really just love being in-house instantly? It sounds like it kind of was a really good match for you.
Yeah, I've really loved it. So I've been in-house for quite a while, more than 20 years. And what I really, really enjoy so much is partnering with the business and learning about the business.
Hmm.
In law school, you really don't, maybe it's changed over time, but at the time I went to law school, and I still hear this from law students, you don't learn so much about business as you do
Yeah.
about the law and the Socratic method and how to think like a lawyer. But so much of what you do in-house is advising the business on risk and where you can give and take, and how can you actually be pragmatic in your approach. And so much of that is tied to the business itself and how businesses run in general,
Yeah.
that you just don't get that solid foundation in law school. And so getting any kind of business background, I think, is very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now I know, a lot of lawyers don't really like business that much. So that's probably a lot of reasons I think they stay in private practice. Is that something that's always intrigued you, even going back before law school, or was this something you kind of discovered when you started getting more learning about business?
It's been more of a discovery. Actually, what intrigued me about going in-house at the time was around the cutting edge idea of doing the online brokerage,
Mm.
because it just wasn't, it used to, early days at E-Trade, we had some ads that said boot your broker. I don't know if you recall that, but it was very provocative at the time that you wouldn't call your
Yeah.
broker and say, I want to order 20 shares of
No.
IBM.
No.
And then suddenly you could just do it yourself, right? And so what I've really loved about being in Silicon Valley since I moved back here was that there's always a new idea. This idea that now we have large language models, AI is all the rage, but before that there were so many other cutting edge ideas over time that even, doing business in the cloud was new. I remember meeting Mark Benioff when he just started Salesforce, and talking about, what we could do in the cloud with data, and I remember people being very much like not feeling that they were going to be comfortable putting their data in the cloud, but look at us now. So I've just really enjoyed seeing the changes over time with the cutting edge technology, and that's really what drew me to want to go in-house. And over time I've realized that I need to fill in the business background in order to be a good counselor for people while I'm in-house.
Now, a lot of my in-house lawyer guests talk about, how they've moved from opportunity to opportunity. Sometimes the opportunity finds you, sometimes you find the opportunity. Can you describe maybe one or two that you've gone through where maybe you were surprised or unexpected, something like that?
Sure. I think the biggest opportunity I ever got was, when I was in-house at Salesforce and I had decided to move back to California. I actually started at Salesforce in Toronto, where we had moved for
Hmm.
several years. And before I took the job, I had taken about 6 years off to raise my children. And I really felt a little bit stuck in my career, and just that I hadn't progressed as much as some other people that I'd seen in my law school class. And so I approached the general counsel at the time, Amy Weaver, who's now the CFO at Salesforce, and tried to get her to understand my abilities, what I could do, where I felt I could add value. And I actually started the pro bono legal program because I had done so much community service while I was taking that 6 years off. And so I asked if I could start something in-house, because I felt really strongly that pro bono was something missing at in-house that I had done a lot of when I was in private practice. And so she said, sure, go ahead. And so I started this program, I rolled it out in the Bay Area, and then we started to have more of a global feel to it. I wanted to do it globally right away because I had been in a hub location and
Hmm.
realized that you felt very much like, oh, hey, what's going on at headquarters that we don't get a taste of? So I really tried to see what we could do on a global basis. And that actually led her to come to me and say, hey, we have this issue we have a couple of issues going on with the foundation and salesforce.org, and I needed your help to do these things. And I was like, hey, let me stop you right there. I'm on the commercial legal team. I'm not a corporate lawyer. I don't know anything about tax law. And she said, well, wait, you told me that you're doing the nonprofit stuff, the pro bono. So now you're my nonprofit lawyer. I see that you can figure it out. And so she really gave me the opportunity to stretch and grow. And as a result of that, they asked me to become the Salesforce.org and Foundation General Counsel at the
Oh,
time.
wow. Hmm.
And so, I was a little reticent to take that jump because I thought, well, am I really ready for that? I think often women think, well, I don't check all the boxes here and I don't know the how to do it. But she encouraged me to take that leap and do something I hadn't done before, and I did. And that really gave me the opportunity to be a general counsel for the first time and
Hmm.
to feel that I could do it.
Huh. Was that pretty interesting? I mean, Salesforce.org must have been really interesting and doing all kinds of interesting work, I'm guessing.
It was extremely interesting for a few reasons. One, because we were a technology business that sold, we received donations from Salesforce, and then we sold at a discount to nonprofits and higher ed, and eventually to K through 12 organizations. So we were really running a technology company, but people didn't understand that. So it was a social enterprise essentially.
Mm.
And I had to learn all of the non-tech aspects of the job, how to do grants, how to run a board related to a grant giving organization, and really learned so much from board members who had run nonprofit organizations. And so that to me was really, so it was a very bifurcated role in that respect, doing both the tech side and all the things I'd kind of learned how to do from being an in-house lawyer at Salesforce, and then doing all of the grant giving and nonprofit organizational aspects. And so it was a very interesting role and very fulfilling.
Now, a lot of my in-house lawyer guests talk about the importance of mentors. You kind of mentioned a couple already. Tell me a little bit about how mentors have played a role in your career, and also, what kind of mentoring you do now since you're, GC's CLO.
So I think mentors are extremely important, and I like to make the distinction between mentors and sponsors. So, Amy was both a mentor and a sponsor because she actually moved my career forward. I had many people who mentored me, made me a stronger lawyer, made me really think critically about things. Another person that I reported to, who had been the general counsel of the commercial legal team at Salesforce, John Moss, was really somebody who really made me stretch as a lawyer and think critically about how to negotiate, how to understand terms and conditions, and how I can push forward on thinking about risk. So, I credit him with a lot of my growth as a lawyer as well. I think, what I've tried to do is always be there for people on my team, but also outside my team. I continue to teach at different law schools when I'm asked to come. I try to do things like this to really explain to people what they can think about, how they can ask for help, how they can grow as lawyers. And to me, it's very important to give back to people and to get them to think about where they can go with their careers and how they can think about it. And it's interesting that you asked about that, because one of the things that I was always interested in doing was joining a board, but I didn't really know how to do that. And I bring this up now because somebody at Salesforce asked me to mentor somebody within our ecosystem who had become the lead lawyer at a smaller tech company in Canada. And because I'd been in Canada, it made sense for me to talk with this person. And I kept in touch with her over a number of years, 5 or 6 years. And over time, she grew, the company grew. And at one point she called and said, we're considering doing an IPO. We're looking to do the 1-1-1 model, the pledge 1%. Can you help and address this with my CEO? So I met with the CEO and talked him through it. And he asked me to present to the board on that. So I did that. And then he said, hey, I really like your background. I thought you did a really great job. Would you be consider joining our board after the IPO?
Oh, wow.
And so I ended up joining this public company board in Canada, and I'm still on that board today. And it was all because I had mentored this person, and then she almost became like a sponsor to me. So it was a full circle moment. And, you can't guarantee anything that would happen, but that, growing your network in a way that gives to others and not just for your own purpose is always, I think, the best way to learn how to network.
Yeah, that's super cool. How do you enjoy being on the board of a company? Is it a totally different experience? What's it like?
It's been very helpful for me in the role as general counsel, because when I'm advising management about something, I can look at it from the board member's perspective to say, hey, am I getting the materials in a timely enough fashion to be able to read through them and be able to spend the time to think critically about where the company is at and what I would need to think
Yeah,
about in my duties as a board director.
yeah.
Understanding how a board comes to consensus is helpful to understand in influencing the board as the general counsel of the company that I'm working with. So it has been really interesting, but I always tell people, like, why are you interested in joining a board? Is it because you're really interested in their technology, or are you interested in just, gaining skills, or do you want the money? What is it? about that, and then try to hone in on what really interests you. And, you know, I think starting out on a nonprofit board is really, it can be very helpful because you learn about governance, especially if you're not in that area of law that you do practice daily. But it's not something that you would want to take lightly, because you can be asked for a lot of, you know, help from the nonprofit, that if you're not really invested and interested in that specific, you know, thing that they're doing, if they're saving animals or the environment or something else, if you're not really invested in it, you don't want to even put money down or help them get money. You know, that's really the benefit of being on a nonprofit, is you really get to dig in on the opportunity. And so people sometimes shy away from that, but I do think it does, you know, having done that was really helpful for me to understand more about governance before I was in a role that allowed me to, you know, really dig in on that.
Now, I know this question is probably far, far in the future, but do you ever see yourself doing something else other than being a GC of a company? Do you see yourself maybe becoming just a full-time board member, or teaching, or doing anything else down the line?
I really like teaching, and I've continued to try to do that, to talk about, you know, how to be a great in-house lawyer, what to think about, what are the skills you need, how to prepare for it. I'm actually writing my memoir right now.
Oh,
And I've been doing it for about 5 years, so I've been learning all about the publishing industry and the ins and outs of, and how hard it is these days to publish a memoir and to be a writer, and how to get recognized. And so I've been on this journey for quite a while. I'm working with an editor right now, so that is something that has been a passion for me. And so I can see myself, you know, continuing to do this.
yeah, that's very cool. Well, Shanti, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your taking the time and sharing a little bit of your wonderful career. When you finish that memoir, please come back and tell me about it.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me.
This is Richard Hsu and Shanti Ariker. Thanks.
Thank you.